your reputation for honesty and integrity and straight talk, and perhaps making a significant contribution to keeping our nation safe.
Senator John McCain on his legacy after 24 years in the Senate as he runs for a fifth term.
The fact is that under John McCain, he was talked about being a straight talk guy. We need more resources. We need more Border Patrol. We need more customs agents. The wait times are too long.
But Democratic challenger Rodney Glassman says McCain has not delivered for his home state. Good morning, I'm Brahm Resnik. Welcome to Sunday Square Off. This morning, conversations with the two major party candidates for the U.S. Senate, Democrat Rodney Glassman, a former Tucson City Councilman, and Republican Senator John McCain. We begin with the senior senator from Arizona, John McCain. Good morning to see you again. Good to see you again,
morning,
sir,
Brahm.
I should say. We are a little more than 2 weeks out from Election Day. You seem to be acting like the race is over. The polls might indicate that. You're up 56-22 on Rodney Glassman. And you just gave $1 million to the Republican Senate Committee to help out other candidates. Is it over?
It was not purely a selfless act, because if we can pick up 10 seats, then I would be the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, which would be a great honor. And by the way, a position that Barry Goldwater once held. So, and I think we have a shot at 10 seats. I'm not saying that we do, but I think that we will, but I think we have a shot at it.
And the last time you predicted that was on the day of the Delaware primary when Christine O'Donnell won, and suddenly those 10 seats didn't look so secure. You still feel that way?
But there's a lot of dynamics out there. We see the state of Washington very close. In California, Carly Fiorina is closing. The election dynamics really are unpredictable right now, Bram. If the conversation we had 2 months ago, I don't think we would have mentioned the name Ruth McClung in our own district. Before the primary, I don't think we thought that Jesse Kelly would have emerged as a very strong Republican candidate against Gifford. So the dynamics and the fluidity of the situation is frankly unlike anything I've ever seen.
And then we're hearing that from many folks. And I'd like to talk to you about the dynamism, fluidity, specifically as it applies to the Tea Party candidates. You have long talked about this country being a center-right nation. You've said that many, many times. Here you have Republican Senate candidate Christine O'Donnell having to deny she's a witch, Sharon Angle calling maternity and autism benefits, quote, politically correct favors for special interests, and a congressional candidate in Tucson saying a 10% flat tax was good enough for Jesus, so it's good enough for us. Does that fit into your center-right nation?
It does, and it's also, frankly, I mean, look, you can, in all due respect, and I'm not being critical of you, but it's easy to pick out quotes of people over the years and things they've said. But what we're seeing is an outburst or an upsurge of anger and frustration that is without parallel, I think, in recent political history. And these candidates may be, in some areas, perhaps more to the right than their standard candidate, but at the same time, what they're standing for, what Sharon Angle is standing for in Nevada, what Carly Fiorina is standing for in California, what Jesse Kelly is standing for, is stop the spending, stop the government intervention into our lives, repeal Obamacare, don't do things like the stimulus package. In other words, get the government back to a right-of-center government rather than the far left that has been governing this country.
And I wonder about that, because several of them are talking about taking it even farther back. They prefer a literal reading of the Constitution. We've heard that from two or three different Republicans running this year and here in Arizona. Is that, again, part of center-right? That seems to be a whole different way of looking at things.
It's a reaction to an expansive and, in my view, unwarranted judicial activism. The latest example is that a woman federal judge, whether it's male or female, doesn't matter, in California has decided that the Don't Ask, Don't Tell legislation should be declared null and void. Even the Obama administration has said, and Secretary Gates says, wait a minute, that should be done by Congress, not by a federal judge. This kind of thing understandably enrages me, but it also enrages the majority of Americans, in my view. So there's great legitimacy to their complaints about out-of-control government and judicial activism.
Glad you brought up don't ask, don't tell. I want to talk about that. Last
Good.
week, the president did say, quote, this policy will end on his watch. That came after the judge ordered the policy ended. There will be appeals. It's unclear how it's going to play out. How far will you go to preserve don't ask, don't tell?
I will go as far as the 4 service chiefs are now advocated that we do, and that is we have a complete and thorough survey as to the impact of the repeal of don't ask, don't tell. I will be largely guided by the results of that survey. The President of the United States has no military experience, no impact with the military, went out over to San Diego and called the corpsman. I guess he thought it was the Day of the Living Dead, and has made this decision because of a political promise he made to the gay and lesbian community. Look, the Commandant of the Marine Corps doesn't want it repealed. Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Chief of Staff of the Army, and the Chief of Naval Operations, the 4 service chiefs, unequivocally said, we need to study the effect on morale and battle effectiveness of the repeal of this law.
So Admiral Mullen's position doesn't matter in this case?
Admiral Mullen's position matters, but not as much to me as the 4 service chiefs. And I respect Secretary Gates, but I disagree with him, not on the grounds of whether it should be repealed or not, but we need to find out what the effect of repeal might be. The reason why they tried to ramrod it through the Senate is they know that the Senate will look different next January.
If it did come up in the lame duck, and I'll admit legislatively, I don't know if this is possible, if it did come up during the lame duck session in November, and again, assuming you're reelected, would you filibuster it?
Absolutely. I will filibuster or stop it from being brought up until we have a thorough and complete study of the effect on morale and battle effectiveness. That is the position of the 4 service chiefs and, according to polls, a majority of the men and women who are serving in the military.
And yet, just to put it in a larger context, it does seem our society is moving in the direction of more civil rights for gay and lesbian couples and individuals. You agree with that?
And I do not oppose that. Although we could get into specifics. I mean, I agree with you in that respect, but we're in 2 wars. This president has no military experience. The 4 service chiefs and the members of the military want to know how it's going to affect their ability to win these wars. I think that's a legitimate concern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got to move on. When we come back, putting Arizona back to work. What's John McCain's plan for doing that? And why did he oppose helping Arizonans who can't find work? President Obama laying out his plan for Afghanistan, what John McCain says about the direction of the war. And I would like to turn to the war in Afghanistan. It doesn't get nearly enough attention these days. Here's a quote from General David Petraeus in Bob Woodward's recent book, Obama's Wars. Let's put that up on the screen. He says, quote, I don't think you win this war. This is the kind of fight we're in for the rest of our lives and probably our kids' lives. Obviously didn't put it up there. One of the takeaways from this book is that most, if not all, of our top generals agree with General Petraeus. Do you share his view this is not a winnable war, but in fact a generational conflict?
General Petraeus was clearly talking about the struggle between us and radical Islamic extremism. General Petraeus has testified on numerous occasions before the Senate Armed Services Committee that we can succeed by implementing his counterinsurgency strategy, the same thing that succeeded in Iraq and adopted to the new circumstances of Afghanistan. I'll tell you the problem with Afghanistan is very simple. That is, the president, without any military advice whatsoever, announced that we were going to be leaving the middle of next year. It has encouraged our enemies and discouraged our friends. It has caused Karzai to want to negotiate with the Taliban. The ISI in Pakistan has close ties to Taliban and the Haqqani network. You cannot tell the enemy a date when you are leaving. So I am very worried about, even with the best general perhaps in history, that we can succeed when our enemies, look, a Taliban leader was captured and was being interrogated by the Americans, and he said, you've got the watches, we've got the time.
And it will always be that way, won't it? Because one of the big debates in the book was over whether the Taliban could be defeated or just degraded. And that was
Al Qaeda has not been totally defeated.
Well, this is the Taliban
in Iraq. Okay, Al Qaeda and other extremist elements have not been completely defeated in Iraq. They will be fighting this kind of low-level counterinsurgency, but no longer do they pose a threat to the government that they can succeed. That's what counterinsurgency strategy is, to isolate the enemy and keep them at the lowest level possible and then gradually eliminate them. There's no victory ceremonies, there's no parades, there's no peace signings on the Missouri. But we can succeed in Afghanistan the same way we succeeded in Iraq.
So define success in Afghanistan, and how long do you think that would take?
Same as in Iraq. A functioning government, a relatively secure environment for the people, a situation where they no longer where the Taliban / Al Qaeda, because they are tied to each other, pose an existential threat to the government. They will stumble along for a while.
And what is a while? Because I think you have said, and others have certainly said, this is a corrupt government we're dealing with, the Karzai government.
Oh, I think it's going to be a number of years in Iraq, Afghanistan.
A U.S. military commitment to those places.
And again, you know, we went through this during the presidential campaign. We have had troops in Japan for 60 years. We have had troops in Germany for 60 years. We have had troops stationed in Bosnia since the conflict there. We have had troops all over the world. The American people are not unhappy about that because American troops are not in harm's way. We are withdrawing from Iraq. We have had a minimal level of casualties in Iraq. Do you see any demonstrations that are saying now, get out of Iraq? What we're saying, what bothers the American people, and very understandably, is casualties. They don't want our young men and women being
and they're seeing that in Afghanistan.
And they saw it in Iraq when we stepped up the surge, which Harry Reid said the war was lost, the president said would never succeed, and now, incredibly, he's claiming credit for victory. It's one of the more bizarre things I've ever seen.
But you see this presence, American presence there 5, 10 years?
I think it could be, depending on the situation, but more importantly, I see us, as we did in Iraq, have tragically an upsurge in casualties, which we are experiencing, and then a gradual reduction as we go and secure places, we hold them, we allow people to resume their lives, and we train up the Afghan military and police to take care of those responsibilities. Again, I don't predict how long we're going to be there, but I do predict that we can and must reduce casualties, or the American people will demand that they all come home. Okay. And I can tell you that Afghanistan falls to the Taliban / Al Qaeda because they work together. Afghanistan will become a cockpit of competition between Pakistan, Russia, Iran, and other nations in the region, India, and other nations in the region, and you will see what will sooner or later become a threat to United States national security.
Okay. Last question on this subject. You're the parent of 2 sons in the armed services.
The one just got out of the Marine Corps, yes.
Oh, he did?
Yes,
Jimmy left?
Yes, he was in Iraq, as you know, and one in pilot training. Yes, I hope he's a better pilot than I was.
How does that weigh on you as a parent and as a senator? How do you weigh that as a parent and as a senator in making these decisions, if at all?
Of course, I worry. Of course, I worry about their safety and security, just as my father worried about me and my grandfather worried about my father. But this is what they have chosen to do. And I'm proud that they want to serve the country. It would break my heart, obviously, if anything happened, but the pride I feel in their willingness to serve the country is very, very sizable.
Yeah. Okay, and when we come back...
I couldn't wait to get some of the McCain-Palin team back together again. I knew this would be fun.
There a Palin fit in John McCain's legacy as a senator?
We want to extend unemployment benefits, but we want it paid for because there are so many things that the Democrats lard onto it.
John McCain standing in the way of extending jobless benefits, but pushing to extend tax cuts for high earners. He explains why. We'll get to that in just a moment, but I want to tell you that the number one question I get, and I would assume you get, is what is our delegation doing to bring jobs to Arizona? We have suffered some of the largest job losses of any state, and also to help the jobless here. What's your plan?
Well, we have made several proposals. One of them is to give small businesses a payroll tax holiday, pay for it with the unspent stimulus funds, so that small businesses can expand and grow and hire. That, by the way, was voted down by the Democrats. Another one is to reduce the corporate tax rate, which is the second highest in the world, which is now 35%. Another one is to give businesses, large and small, some kind of certainty. We left town, Congress left town, without acting on the Bush tax cuts, extensions or not. CPAs say they can't advise their clients. They don't know whether the estate tax is going to go up to 55%. They don't. So we need to give them some kind of confidence or certainty of what their economic future is going to be. And finally, we need to extend the tax cuts to everyone, because raising taxes on what Obama likes to call the very rich, that's 50% of small business income in America. That would be a terrible mistake at this particular time. And they're always talking about it would cost us $700 billion or $300 billion. You know, Brahm, that's where they're all wrong. It's not their money. It's our money. It's the taxpayers' money. So we'd be saving them money. And what effect would that have on the economy? I think it would be very serious. But we can cut spending to a dramatic degree where it's the problem with the economy of America is not taxes, it's spending.
Well, let's talk about that soundbite.
The numbers today, or a couple of days ago, $1.3 trillion deficit. Second highest in history.
And there are economists who say the Bush tax cuts, which you initially argued against, I think back in 2000, are in a large part responsible for a structural deficit that exists right now, about $2 trillion of that.
Could I just respond
sure
to that?
Thing.
To start with, I argued against the tax cuts in 2000 because I said we're not cutting spending. We increase spending. And the voters punished Republicans in 2006 and 2008. And the second thing, again, I want to point out, it is not that taxes haven't increased, it is that spending, the size of government has doubled since 1999. And so if we cut the spending and keep the taxes low, but if we increase taxes, I think you could go back to Jack Kennedy, who wanted to cut capital gains taxes, and Reagan, we cut taxes under Reagan, but we also cut spending.
Let's talk about that bite at the top. You and Senator John Kyle said you cannot support extending unemployment benefits. That was back in July because it would increase the deficit and there was no way to pay for it. Yet at the same time, you were supporting the extension of the Bush tax cuts for high earners, which, again, as I said earlier, economists say have been a huge contributor to our deficit. So here you have these people in great need, which I think you would agree, versus people in not great need. How could you favor one over the other?
Well, first of all, I could have cut ethanol subsidies, for example. We could have eliminated them. We could have cut so many parts of government that have grown dramatically to pay for it. We aren't against extending those cuts. We want to pay for it. If you increase taxes on any group of Americans, rich or middle income, at this time, you are going to harm the economy. So we're not against, and we had a proposal to go ahead and extend the unemployment benefits, but not lard it on by putting on all kinds of extraneous programs on it as well. An old trick of the Democrats is try to put out something there that they really think they can embarrass into voting for, and then lard it up, Christmas tree it with all kinds of ornaments of other spending. It's got to stop.
It does have to stop, but again, you had people here in need. We have 175,000 people collecting unemployment benefits.
Yeah. And if they had adopted our proposal, which paid for the unemployment benefits, they would have gotten those benefits.
And yet economists would argue that those who earn over $250,000, and I'll be direct about it, such as your family, is that a tax cut you need?
That's also half of the income of small business in America.
These small businesses are large businesses. We're not talking about mom. In that range, these are large businesses.
But they are still small businesses.
50 million a year, 100 million a year?
50% of the small business income will be taxed if we don't extend the Bush tax cuts. Small businesses are the heart of our economy. And again, we would have voted in a New York minute for the extension of unemployment, but we got tired of the increases in spending. We'd lay it on our kids a $13 trillion debt.
Well, let me ask this: is that tax cut for the highest earners, a tax cut your family would need or even use?
Oh, I've never thought about it in that context, but I have thought about the small business people I meet all over this state who would see an increase in their taxes. I see small business people in Show Low and in Snowflake and all around the state and in Yuma that say, look, what is my future going to be? What is it going to be taxed? What's the next regulation associated with Obamacare? We found out recently, as you know, that any transaction of $600 or more has to be reported to the IRS. We tried to vote that down. Democrats voted against it.
Okay, and we have to move on. Senator McCain, thanks very much for your time this morning. Best of luck November 2nd. You can see the extended version of this interview at 12news.azcentral.com.
For honesty and integrity and straight talk. And perhaps making a significant contribution to keeping our nation safe. Arizona is a place full of our bases, full of our men and women who are serving our National Guard, and we are a vital part of our nation's defense.
Senator John McCain summing up his legacy representing Arizona for almost 30 years. You put Sarah Palin on the national stage as your running mate in 2008, and she's kind of taken it from there. She's a Republican star right now. Is she your greatest contribution to this country as a senator?
I think, frankly, the tape you just played is major, but I am so proud of Sarah Palin and the contribution she continues to make. She, and along with the Tea Party movement and other things, have made a major contribution to this veritable political earthquake that we're seeing across America. And she really does inspire people, and so I'm very proud of her. Cindy and I and Sarah and Todd remain close, and I think she will remain a major player on the national scene for quite some time.
So you'll be surprised if, in writing your political farewell, the writer said, "John McCain, your POW, I'll say exploits, but you're known for your POW experience." If it was,
and he chose
POW,
Sarah Palin,
and he chose Sarah Palin as his running mate.
I'd be glad to have that on my political obituary.
I was interested when you summed up your legacy. You didn't mention any legislative achievements. Why is that?
Well, in other words, being involved in all of the legislation that, for example, the authorization to go to war in Operation Desert Storm, that was a legislative act. As far as the legislation for the training and equipment of the men and women in the military, all of those policies also. Look, I am proud also for my environmental record, the wilderness bills, protection of the Grand Canyon, the protection of the great natural treasures. I'm proud of my record of work with Native Americans and significant legislation there. There's a lot of things that I think I have to look back on with pride. But believe it or not, Brahm, I'm not very good at bragging a great deal. And so I'm always a little uncomfortable to tout my qualifications or my record because, the reality is that other people will be judging me, not me.
As we look forward into, assuming you're reelected, to another legislative term, is there one opportunity you see for getting something done?
It's a great opportunity if the president will seize it. The president has to lead. Republicans will gain seats. We obviously would be glad to act in a principled way to try to get this economy back on track. But we've got to keep taxes low. We've got to give small businesses what they need to grow and hire. We need to have an economy and a government that really lets people realize their ambitions to the fullest extent. I saw an article this morning by the founder of Home Depot that was in the Wall Street Journal, And he said today, because of the climate, that he couldn't do that same, carry out that same successful venture that was very small and now is all over the country. We've got to get back to that. We're still the most innovative and most productive and best nation in the world by any measurement, but we've got to get things back on track.
One of the revelations in this this past campaign has been you're not a maverick. You've told us you're not a maverick, and yet.
But again, when I was going against my own president on spending and other things, then I was a maverick. Then when I go against this president, I am a partisan. What I was saying to him was, other people will give me labels, but I will act on principle, whether it's my own president or another party's president. That it was, in all due respect, that was totally distorted, but life isn't fair.
No, it's not fair, as we've all learned. You surround yourself with independents. Grant Woods here in Arizona is as independent a Republican as can be, sometimes to his detriment.
Most entertaining, too.
That too. Joe Lieberman, independent.
I love Joe.
Good friend of yours. Lindsey Graham. I hope you guys are still on good terms.
Oh, yeah.
Another independent. So you surround yourself with independents. It seems to me you've always had an independent spirit. Are we going to see more of that?
Oh, yeah. When I ran for president in 2000, the Bush campaign, you know what their attack line is? He flip-flops. He is not the same. In 2008, John Kerry and the Democrats said, he's not the John McCain that I knew. It's a great attack line because it really goes to the heart of integrity of a candidate. I am the same person that I have been, only I am more knowledgeable and I'm convinced more capable. I mean, I've had the benefit of a great deal of experience, and the greatest honor of my life has been to serve the people of Arizona, and I work for them.
Final question, how long will you keep serving the people of Arizona? You're going to try to break Carl Hayden's record. I think it's, 40 years, 42 years?
No, I think you take that one step at a time, but look, the situation, national security-wise and our economy-wise, I know I can make a difference. I know I can be effective, and I look forward to these next couple of years anyway, while we make some of the crucial decisions about America's future, both at home and abroad.
Okay. Senator John McCain, again, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thanks for the interrogation, and thanks. I enjoyed being with you again.
Okay, hope to see you again real soon. Thanks so much.